Hi, everyone. I'm on a live on YouTube. Finally, it's something I've been wanting to do, and I forgot to check how I even look. So there's that. It's great to be here on a live. This is the first time I've done it, and surprisingly, let me see, that might be better. I had to wait to do it, I had to be qualified to do it, or something like that. So, anyways, it's a little bit different than Facebook. So I am here to talk about pets and distinguishing how we can distinguish our emotions from our pets' emotions, and how this is going to help restore the regard and honor for our pets' emotions as well as for our own emotions. Um, so just so you know, I do apologize for not putting out as many videos as I wanted to. It's actually takes a lot of work to do that. And so, especially like with the editing and creating the thumbnail and all that. So I decided to just go ahead and go live because I can get my information out quicker without wasting time to edit. Um, so I wanted to talk about this. This is something that I think is very important, and I wanted to talk about the subtle and overlooked scientific information on emotions. For those of you, by the way, I'll introduce myself. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Velia, and I am an animal telepathist. I communicate with animals via animal telepathy, and I am also an energy healing practitioner. And I help people with pets learn to efficiently influence their pets' behavioral and physical health by learning how to influence their own emotional energetics. And I pretty much specialize in emotional energetics. And what that means is emotions are energy, and energetics is the transfer and flow of energy, and where we direct that transfer and flow of energy. And so, my background is in psychological research with a focus in neuroscience or neuropsychology and biopsychology. I did a lot of research in biopsychology and took a lot of courses in brain and behavior neuroscience. And this is where my information comes from. And I wanted to, yeah, that's basically what I'm going to talk about today, is kind of the things that are overlooked when it comes to emotions, in regard to the science behind it. And let me see if I want to move this light a little bit. Okay, so one thing I wanted to talk about was, sorry, I still don't really know the setup I'm going to have for these lives. So one thing that I've noticed is that in myself and in others, who my clients who are with their pets and want to learn how to become closer to your pets. One of the things that can impede us from doing so is not realizing and not knowing the difference between our emotions and their emotions. So we are each individuals. Our pets have their own emotions. They have their own thing going on. They have their own, let's just say, their own lives going on, their own interests going on within the home. And we leave the home. We have our own lives, our own work life, our own personal life with other humans, and they have theirs. And both of those need to be regarded and honored. And so when it comes to being an efficient pack leader, and this can be if whether you have a cat, a dog, a parrot, it doesn't matter what kind of animal you have. If you have domesticated an animal and they are living in your home, you are the pack leader. And you are essentially an emotional pack leader. And so it's very important for us, in order to feel closer to our pets, for us to learn our own emotional states. And this is really big right now. there's a lot of research going on right now, and has been going on for a while. But now we have more technology to see the processes, to actually visually see it and map them out. And when it comes to emotions and emotional responses. And what I did in college was I did something called neural mapping, where I basically focused on emotional responses all the way to the behavioral response within addicted populations. And so everything I'm going to tell you is based off of that and my pre-med background. And what I can see is that there is this gap between what science says and what's published in articles, scientific and regular journals, such as Psychology Today, because they don't go too in depth in the scientific article piece. What's published in those, and what the typical layperson that is seeking to heal themselves, that is seeking mental relief, there is a gap between those two. And as far as the information being put out, and the reason why is because we tend to look towards what science has to say, what science has to say about this stuff, in hopes to learn how we can help ourselves. And that's actually why I went into psychology. I had a father who was paranoid schizophrenic, and I knew that I was following his same path. And so I endured a lot of anxiety, a lot of suffering. And I decided to go into psychological research, into majoring in psychology and biology, and just to hopefully find a way to help myself. And the truth is that the scientific piece, the science, it really focuses on the processes. It doesn't focus on how to heal ourselves. What the area that focuses on how to heal ourselves is the therapeutic part. And a lot of the time that is proven by science, but the therapeutic part is observed first, and then we go back and allow science to prove it. So the therapy, if you went to a counselor, a psychologist, a professional psychologist, the therapy is what helps us heal. Whereas science focuses on the chemical processes, the physiological processes, the mapping, which is what I did, the mapping of what happens when sensory information comes in, what happens within the nervous system, and how the body responds and how quick it is. So those are processes. And the counseling and the psychological helps with the healing. So those are two different things. And so I see a lot of talk about where emotions are elicited, what anatomical structure emotions are elicited, and which system is, as far as the nervous system, which system does what. And the truth is that knowing that information, unless you are a student in psychology or neurosciences or any of the sciences, unless you're a student and you're doing research and you're working on your thesis or you're working on projects and you're trying to learn that because it's going to become your career, or unless you are a person with a business who is trying to help others heal, and you want to do that research, like for instance, if you're a counselor or if you work in psychoanalysis, that is really the only reason to go to that scientific information. That is the only reason to go to that scientific information. Whereas what I see is that in myself, I saw this in myself and I see it in others. Many of us who are just lay persons to scientific information. We don't have the background. Many of us don't have the background on how these processes work, all the way down to the proteins, the peptides, enzymes, any of that. We don't have that background. And when we look to help ourselves within that information, within that very dense information, we are stressing ourselves out. We are actually causing the chemicals, the emotional chemical responses that we're trying to avoid to feel in the first place. And so I think this is very interesting because we know that we know this, but it's not really talked about. But you can see it in articles when you go in depth into them. The way stress, emotional chemicals, or including stress hormones, but it's not just those. It's hundreds of chemicals and combinations of chemicals. So the way emotional chemicals are elicited within our bodies is through two pathways. The first pathway is through sensory information. Anything we hear, touch, taste, smell, and detect subtly through subtle energy changes, anything coming in through those sensory informations, our senses, anything coming through those senses trigger emotions. It doesn't even have to be something scary that you see. It's going to trigger emotions, and it doesn't matter which anatomical structure in the brain is eliciting those emotions. You can know all the different places, whether it's the amygdala, hypothalamus, any of them. You can know all those names, and it still won't help you heal. So what's important to know is what we're inputting in from our environment. How are we controlling our environment? So the input is what is more important to focus on rather than where the emotion is elicited or what chemicals are released. And so what I've noticed is that even in myself, when I used to chase, I don't chase it anymore because I understand it. But when I used to chase the information of, I have to know why, which system, the parasympathetic or sympathetic system, which one is, doing which, in order to understand what I'm going through, it helps to a degree. It helps. However, you are at that moment, you are still just inputting, you're inputting data. So there's information being input in through the sensory system, and any information being input through the sensory system can overwork the nervous system. Doesn't matter which system it is, it can overwork the nervous system. And the reason why I don't want to focus on which one it is because for some people it helps them understand that, and there's plenty of people that talk about that out there. For me, I want to get away from that, because no matter if you know which system it is, it's still not going to help you heal yourself. Now, it can help you understand logically, why am I doing this? And that logic can provide a little bit of compassion. That's what I've noticed, is that people kind of chase this scientific information because we tell ourselves, well, I need to know why my body is going through this. And if I know, then maybe I know how to heal it. And one of the things I noticed is that, when we understood that the parasympathetic system is what rests and relaxes us, and the other one helps us with fear, and that it's a survival technique, that allowed a little bit of compassion to come in for us. However, it only does that for a limit. Eventually, it only does that to a degree. Eventually, you'll realize that the system is so complex. It is so dense in information. And not only that, we don't even have all of the information. There's still, ongoing scientific research on this, because we still don't understand it. And that information is bound to change. Science has always changed over the course of history. So if you learn something, what will happen is you're going to either add on more information to tack onto that, which can cause a person who doesn't have the background in science, or a strong background in science, that can cause you stress. It can cause you stress to know this, to feel like you have to understand all of this in order to help yourself. And not only that, science has definitely been wrong in a lot of areas, and we can expect it to still be wrong. That's a pattern that we've had, especially with limitations in technology. A lot of scientific findings are also concluded. Parts of scientific findings are concluded based on assumptions on the evidence that we have, and sometimes we find that it differs when we finally get the technology and figure out a way to actually test that. We've seen that so many times, and so my point is that the need to know, this need to know that we tell ourselves, I need to know, I need to understand my body, I need to understand how the system works. It's true to a degree. It's helpful because it provides a little bit of compassion for who you are and how you were made. But it's only up to a degree. And so the reason why I'm talking about this is because many of us tend to focus on the scientific background, and for the layperson that doesn't have the scientific background, that doesn't have the understanding, it's not necessary. It's not really necessary. What is absolutely necessary in relaxing your nervous system is control of the input of information going in through the senses. So so for example, if you want to study, the science behind emotions and the nervous system and the chemicals and all of that fun stuff, if you want to study that, that's great. That could possibly help you come up with a method yourself on how to heal. It would take a lot of work, but you might be able to do so. However, you need breaks. You absolutely need breaks from taking in that information. So it is more important for us to our whole purpose in finding a way to heal ourselves is how to heal now in the present moment. And so it's if that's your goal, like I said, unless you're studying neuropsychology and you're a student and you're planning to present somewhere and write publications, unless you're doing that, your main purpose is just to learn how to heal now in the present moment. And so if you enjoy researching this information, you have to take breaks, because that control of input of information, the scientific information, can overload your nervous system. So that can cause overstimulation, which can then cause emotional chemicals, including stress hormones. But it's not just those. Dopamine is also another one. But I don't want to go too far into that. There's a lot of emotional chemicals that will be elicited just from doing something as simple as studying, doing something as simple as research. Even when we're trying to help ourselves, we're trying to figure out a way to relax. So I think that's interesting. I find that really interesting. So if we want to relax, if we want to come to a neutral state, at least a neutral state, we have to control the input of information that is coming into our senses. That is one pathway that leads to emotions, elicitation of emotions. Okay, that is one pathway. The second pathway that leads to elicitation of emotions is thoughts. This can include positive or negative thoughts. I put those in quotations. I'll try to remember. I'll try to explain why in just a moment. Hopefully I can remember to do that. Positive and negative thoughts, doesn't matter which ones they are, they still elicit emotions. Dreaming can elicit emotions. Working, studying, researching. So these are all related to thoughts. All of this can elicit emotions. And when you have a constant flow of this information coming in, and you don't allow yourself, your nervous system, to take a break from the input of that information, even the thinking, overthinking, when you don't allow a break of thinking, that leads to emotions that we're actually trying to escape from. or we're trying to relieve ourselves from. Many of us do escape, such as, that's why people binge eat and do drugs, because we're escaping those emotions. It becomes the nervous system becomes overwhelmed from the information coming in. So there's two pathways that can elicit our emotions, and that's through the sensory information, the sensory system, information input through there, and thoughts. Thoughts is another way that we get information or data input into the nervous system. And so when it comes to these activities, um, this we find ourselves doing this when we have to work 8 hours a day, when we have to come home from work and we immediately have to go into cleaning the house or cooking dinner or planning for the next thing. So these are everyday activities where if we don't get a break, if we don't take a break, our nervous system will never rebalance itself. It will never go back to homeostasis, which is a balance in the chemicals. It's an equilibrium in all of the chemical flows that are coming in from all the sensory input information and thoughts that are happening throughout the day. And so, if we want to if we want to feel closer to our animals, if we want to be able to restore the regard and the honor for our pets' emotional needs, we have to start with knowing what is our emotional needs. We have to be able to know when we need a break. We have to be able to recognize that and also control the input, the information input into the body. We have to know when to take a break from social media. We have to know, we have to be able to know how to control what is presented in front of us as far as information, and when to engage with it, how to control that engagement. So I'm going to give another example. When it comes to social media, I used to have a really big problem with, man, my hair is a mess. I should have looked at it before I came on. I used to have a really big problem with going on to social media and and commenting on posts that I didn't agree with. Right? I guess people call it a troll. I'm not really sure, but I would just express my opinion, and a lot of people would receive it well. But I consider it a problem because it took a lot of time away from me. It took a long time for me to write this information out. And so, not only that, during the times that I was responding to something on social media that did upset me, um, or did kind of elevate my stress, responding to it also continued that elevation of stress, and then receiving the interaction back, the response back, may have elevated my stress even more. So, um, knowing how to control information input into our system, knowing when to say, I need a break, I need to not engage with social media right now. Um, that is what's going to actually help us find emotional relief and stress relief. I'll give you another example of information input. I used to binge watch a bunch of shows. I know a lot of people do, and I still love to do it, but I have to control it. Um, I used to binge watch a bunch of shows and for hours and hours, right? That's what binge watching is. And I did it every single day after coming home from work. I would tell myself that this was my activity to relax. Okay. I was saying that this is relaxation. I was trying to convince myself that I'm relaxing here by coming home immediately and focusing on the TV and watching information, even if it was comedy. Even if it was comedy, I rewatched so many shows that I love, that I find really funny. I rewatched them over and over again. And eventually I realized it's not relaxing me. It's actually stressing me out more, because I'm keeping I'm overstimulating my nervous system at a high baseline, the same baseline that I came home with from a busy day at work. So that's another example of information input that has to be controlled. So we we don't necessarily know how to relax, and it took me a long time to learn how to relax. And so now I've pretty much figured it out. I know how my body feels when it's relaxed. I've actually accustomed myself to do it. And binge watching TV, even though I love to still do it, and I still allow myself to do it here and there, but allowing that to get out of control does not relax me. In fact, that causes more stress. I hope I'm not talking too loud. I kind of felt an echo, so I'm really sorry if I am. So that's just another example of how this really boils down the science of emotions when it comes to healing. Okay, when it comes to healing ourselves, how it really boils down to information input, controlling that information that's coming in through the sensory system and our thoughts. And so once we learn that overthinking, once we catch ourselves overthinking and overworking, overreading, right? So you could be reading anything, even reading fictional novels. If you binge on that, that can increase stress in your body. And so once we realize that these activities causes stress, then we can start knowing what is our emotions. We can start recognizing and regulating how many emotions we have within a day. Because the main reason why most of us are overwhelmed and overstimulated and are now living in chronic stress is because we do not regulate information input. We are constantly thinking, having hundreds, I think it's even thousands of thoughts a day, which leads to hundreds of thousands of emotions a day. And I do probably mean hundreds of thousands. The more each thought that you have, every single one thought that you have has at least one emotion attached to it, at least. And so not only that, there's combinations of emotions that we don't even have words to label them with. And so this is a lot of heavy energy, because thoughts are energy, emotions are energy. Emotions are energy that can be felt chemically, okay? Because that's what emotions are. They are chemicals. So we feel this heavy energy when we have that many emotions in a day. This now reminds me of the positive and negative thoughts that I was talking about earlier. So labeling our emotions, labeling our thoughts as positive and negative. This is an example of how we associate emotions to words. So having a language compared to animals, right? Animals don't have a language they don't have a verbal language necessarily, not like ours. And that does not mean that we're superior to them, because our language, our verbal language, can limit us. And I'm going to talk about how in just a moment. But animals, I'm so happy, do not have the same verbal language that we do. And so we all communicate, both, animals and humans communicate with each other in all these different ways. Movements, eye movements, body language. There's animals do bark or meow, or can vocalize a noise. And so they can communicate in certain ways. And now I'm thinking of parrots. They can certainly communicate in some ways with language too. But we all have the ability to communicate, but humans have the language part. verbalizing language, this has really created kind of limited language has limited our potential. And one of the ways it has done this is by when it comes to labeling words, labeling things such as positive or negative, we end up attaching emotions to these words. And when we attach, if you think about it, when we attach an emotion, a positive emotion to a positive word, you're going to respond positively to that word, right? If you attach a negative emotion to a negative word, you're going to respond negatively. You might judge it. You might reject it. This judgment and rejection of our thoughts or our emotions causes stress. So it can cause stress, and therefore it's I would recommend don't label your emotions or your thoughts as positive or negative until you can learn to look at them as neutral. It's okay. Like, for instance, I can label positive and negative numbers on a number scale, -1, -2, -3 versus positive numbers. I have no emotional attachment to that. We begin to form emotional attachments to that when it becomes something of like related to our bank account. If our bank account goes negative, then we have an emotional attachment to that. So it's very possible to speak our language and not assign emotional attachments to it. The problem is that we do, and we don't even realize that we do. And so just by labeling a thought or an emotion as positive or negative, guess what? You're going to be eliciting positive or negative chemicals, emotional chemicals in your body. So you're going to be eliciting, if you're feeling judgment or rejection towards a word or a thought, you're going to be releasing stress chemicals and other chemicals that are going to reinforce that behavior. So I hope that makes sense. I know I'm talking a lot right now. So I don't know. I'm thinking like I wanted to keep these videos short, but I also haven't been on a live on YouTube. I haven't been on YouTube in so long that I just thought I'd make this video and kind of make it as long as I want. But I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with the video structures here. I hope I can get better at delivering this information, though. That's kind of my purpose and my goal with this video. So comparing us to animals, comparing the language that we have, the ways humans behave, comparing that to animals. Animals tend to experience life much differently than humans do. One of the reasons, because they don't label their situation. They don't necessarily label positive and negative emotions or positive and negative associations to situations. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't recognize fear, because they do. However, so let's just say this: pain is a word that many humans, especially when it comes to our animals, many humans have associated a negative emotion to pain. And it's almost to where if an animal experiences pain, the first thing that we go to is to euthanize them. I hear that a lot. Many people think that, oh, if they're in pain, then they're suffering. And we want to end suffering for them. We don't want that to carry on. And so we think that we're protecting them by possibly euthanizing them and helping them along the way so they don't suffer. So we're coming from a good place. But the truth is that when I talk to animals And if somebody comes to me and they say, my animal is possibly in the death and dying process, can you ask them if they are ready to be euthanized or need assistance? When I talk to animals, a lot of the times what I've noticed is that they don't attach any emotions to their pain, or their discomfort. Whereas humans, when they go through pain, there's a lot of emotions attached to this. There is usually, sometimes there's anger, sometimes there's grief due to the loss of abilities. If you're in some kind of pain, like if you broke your arm or something like that, or had to have surgery, there can be grief. There can be anger towards the self. There can also be judgment, which is an emotion, a component of emotions. And so judgment isn't a emotion; it's comprised of multiple emotions. Um, So when humans experience pain, we actually create more suffering within ourselves when we experience it. And then with animals, when animals experience pain, they are more times more likely to just experience the pain. They don't attach these emotions to it. And that's what makes it not as suffering. So it's the emotions that causes the suffering more so than the physical pain. Now, don't get me wrong, we can endure physical pain to where it really is suffering. We can certainly do that, but a lot of the times, there are many times where humans have assistance like medication, right? And so they may not actually be feeling pain at that moment, but they're feeling emotional suffering because of the situation that they're in, the limitations that they're in now because of that issue, because of whatever pain they're going through. So animals, when they experience pain, they are only experiencing the pain most of the time. They are not getting wrapped up in these emotions. And so when humans think that, is my animal feeling pain and do I need to euthanize them? The answer is usually no. The answer is usually no, because they don't see it as suffering as much as humans do, because they don't associate the emotions with the pain. So when I communicate with an animal and I ask them, are you ready to go? Do you want assistance? Do you want assistance, like a euthanasia assistance, or would you like to die naturally? Sometimes they will say, yes, I want assistance. And what I usually do is come back and ask them multiple times. The reason why I do that, I'm going to turn off this light. I'm going to turn off that light. It's a bit hot in here. The reason why I ask them multiple times is because after a little bit, it could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour later, it could be a day later, they change their minds. That pain or that discomfort will dissipate. And they feel good, and they feel like they may not feel really good, but they feel better to where they're not really ready to go. So when I ask an animal, if you want assistance to be euthanized, I ask them multiple times over the course of several days. It's not just a one-time response. It's something that can change. And so I just wanted to clarify that when pets feel pain and humans think, are they suffering? We're thinking of it much differently than how an animal does, because we're thinking that the suffering is associated with the pain, but it's actually, in humans, it's associated with the emotions that come along with when we have a physical pain, a physical disability, or a physical limitation. So I hope that makes sense. So there's that. So if we want to have regard, if we want to restore the regard and honor for our pets' emotions, if we want to do that, we don't want to put our emotions onto them. We need to know what is ours and what is theirs. Um, so, for example, if we don't even realize that when we have pain, we have emotional suffering along with that pain, and we don't realize the difference, then we're going to end up putting those emotions onto our pets. And so when they don't really feel that way, so we will be transferring that those emotions to them and assuming that they have those same emotions that we do, and they don't. So it's very important to understand how it is that we experience emotions, how they are elicited, not where they're elicited. It doesn't matter where they're elicited in the body, which is what science focuses on. That's the job of science, is to tell us the processes. But for the everyday layperson who is, who is not a science student, who is not going into graduate school, who doesn't have a business in psychoanalysis, you don't need to know where in the body emotions are elicited. It's all over the entire body. You don't need to know the anatomical structure. You don't need to know what chemicals. All you need to know to get relief is what triggers emotions. And it's anything coming in through the sensory system and our thoughts. So if we control that input of emotions, we can then find relief, emotional relief. And so when going back to pain, if we have pain and we're, I'm just going to give you an example. My mother was recently injured. She fell on her arm and she shattered the shoulder, her bones in the shoulder, and she had a surgery, and she was in a lot of pain. And there's most likely a lot of anger towards herself. I haven't talked to her about this, but most likely there was a lot of anger because she was limited in movement for a very long time. So if we can forgive ourselves for that and separate those emotions, then it really just becomes a time to rest and heal, which is a time that we don't really give ourselves. That rest and healing time could be an opportunity to reduce the stress in the nervous system, reduce input of information, and learn to control the input of information into the nervous system, so we can learn to actually find peace of mind. So that's one example. I hope that makes sense. So to continue, we have to know what is our emotions and what is theirs. What is our pet's emotions? And we have to respect the fact that they get to own their own emotions, and we don't necessarily have to put our emotions onto them. So for example, if when we have dogs, if we have a dog and they're healing from some kind of trauma, they're rehabilitating. It's very important that we don't think that, ooh, I'm hot. It's so hot in this room. It's like 104 degrees outside. So I tried to turn the air condition up a tiny bit. So it gets really hot in this room. So if we have a dog that's rehabilitating from trauma, a lot of us think, or a cat, it doesn't matter what animal it is. I'm just giving an example of a dog, but it can be any animal. If we have an animal that is traumatized, we will sometimes think that we need to show love to this animal and show love the same way that we were shown as humans. And so we immediately think of being hugged, being, cuddled, being kissed, things like that. Just those main things, being close to them. And the reality is that when an animal is communicating that they are, when an animal is traumatized, and they usually tend to communicate when they don't want to be touched. So when they don't want to be touched, when they don't want to have people close to them, they will communicate that. It usually is labeled, again, we're going back to labels, as aggression. And many of us have associated stress, emotional chemicals related to stress to the word aggression. And really, it's a form of communication. When you see a dog, showing their teeth, when you see them barking in an intimidating manner, it is not aggression. It is communication. It is communication, and it's saying, "Back off. I want my space." And so so in order to learn how to regard it, how to honor that, we have to stop associating emotions that we think are associated with their behavior or the words that we're labeling to their behaviors and putting it on them, because then that changes the entire situation when we can see that they are just communicating. That's all they're doing. They can't say, "Back off, give me space." That is the way they communicate. So I'll give you one example. My cat, Katrina, the way she told us to back off, she was very traumatized when she came to us. And now she's not. She's very happy. The way she told us to back off was by scratching us. And she's a big girl, and it would hurt. It would hurt really bad. She would draw blood. And we learned to back off when she does that. We didn't label her as mean. We didn't label her as a mean cat or an aggressive cat, or anything like that. We didn't put these labels on her, nor did we associate any emotions to it. We remained neutral. So that is what has helped her heal, is for us to not put those emotions on her. And we respected and honored what she asked for and who she was, what she was going through at that time. So I think I'm going to go ahead and end this with the fact that when humans are looking for a way to get emotional relief within themselves, we chase the science because we don't know what else to do. The science is being pushed on us, and a lot of people think that that's well, when I say the science is being pushed on us, it's there, right? It's easy to access. And a lot of people think that that's the only way we can figure out how to heal. But that's not true. Science only teaches us processes. It doesn't teach us how to heal, the process of healing. It's the therapy that teaches us how to heal. The therapeutic procedures that science proves works. So so when we're chasing the science of what chemical is being released when I feel this, or what is happening with my nervous system, what's the name of each system, what's the anatomical structure, we are causing more stress within us, trying to chase that information and understand it, especially if you don't have a scientific background. It's not going to help you heal. What will help you heal is controlling that input of information and taking breaks from the information that's inputted into the system. Relaxation, meditation, that will help you heal. And when we do relax, when we do allow ourselves the opportunity to relax, as I said earlier, if you love doing the research in science, which I do love as well, you have to take breaks from it. If we don't allow ourselves to have breaks of meditation, of relaxation, closing your eyes, and not allowing a lot of input to come in to the nervous system, and not allowing, let's just say it this way, not jumping on the train of thoughts and having them take you places that you don't want to go. When we control that, we control the amount of emotions that are elicited in the body. Therefore, we can control the amount of stress we feel. So our goal when we say we want, we want mental relief, when we say we want mental health really means peace of mind. That's all mental health means. Mental illness is the symptoms of trauma. That's all mental illness is. So mental health is finding peace of mind. And the way we get there is by coming to a place of neutrality. That is an emotion, but it's a neutral emotion. It is a balance between all of the emotions of love, bliss, and all of the emotions of anger, grief, and pride. So it is a nice balance. So if we can come to that neutral state where our nervous system is balanced in chemicals, is in an equilibrium state, through meditation and relaxation, and there's other ways. It's not just those. There are other ways, such as playfulness, being wondrous, being childlike. That is what brings us to a state of neutrality. And that is where our pets want us to be. That is where our pets can meet us. They can energetically meet us. We can influence their behavior when we are in that state much more than we can if we are in a stressful state. If you have past pets, pets that have crossed over, they can reach you when you're in a state of neutrality. You can detect more subtle energies around you when you are in a state of neutrality. So when we are striving for, and by we, I mean the typical lay person who is not a student in sciences, or a psychologist, or a worker in psychoanalysis, or it does not have a business where you have to learn the sciences. The typical lay person, you don't need to read into all the sciences. You don't have to understand it all. In fact, it will only cause the stress chemicals that you are trying to relieve yourself from. The more you dig into it, especially if you don't give yourself breaks and you don't give yourself that relief. So, and once we learn how emotions are elicited in the body, then we can start distinguishing when we actually have emotions, when, how thoughts create emotions, even positive thoughts, negative thoughts, whatever it is. Overthinking, we can learn all of that. We can start to detect that a little bit more and get better at detecting that because we're in a state of neutrality. So again, you can detect subtle energies when you are in a state of neutrality. You can't really detect it when you're overwhelmed with stress chemicals, or hyper excited. You can't detect. So hyper excitement, any kind of excitement or attachment to an outcome, you can't really detect subtle energy changes around you, including how your pet feels, the emotions around your pets, and as well as past crossover pets trying to reach you. So I think I'm going to go ahead and end it now. I had a lot of fun on this live. Again, this was my first live, and I hope to do more. I don't have a consistent time of when I'm going to do my lives yet, but I hope to do more. It's just easier to do it this way than it is to record and edit. I don't produce any videos when I do it that way. I'm hoping I'll get better, but for now I'm going to do the lives because I can talk very, very well during the live, somewhat. So I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, if you have any experiences where you've noticed that how, where stress is caused in you, where emotions are elicited in you in some of the most subtle activities that you didn't think emotions would be elicited, write them down in the chat. Write them down in the chat because people are going to want to learn how this is happening, how a lot of people are going to be able to relate to this. And yeah, I think everyone's input is going to help everyone else. So I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And I hope to see you again very soon.